"Rattle up your possessions," they ordered. I was told that being here was a pain. This person thinks I need to stop freeloading and grow up. Even my own mother said it to me as I stood in the middle of the living room, holding the dish I had just cleaned like an unwanted guest. She said, "You've had your fill, trying to seem neutral. This house isn't my place. Ryan and Melissa have officially decided to remain. Maybe you need to figure out what you're here to do with your life now. Some other location." Melissa didn't say a word. She only grinned. Ryan. He ignored me and kept his mouth shut. For the past 2 years, they did not even bother to ask where I had been. Nobody bothered to ask how the mortgage payment was coming along. I failed to query as to where they got the money for their ever-increasing food budget. I was recently kicked out. Very well, I gave them the green light to keep going since I thought they were in command. I failed to hear a scream. My objection went unspoken. I am heading towards my bedroom. My laptop was confiscated. Consider these notepads. Discreetly documenting all of my financial transactions, including bills and transfers in one binder. Afterwards, I left. Having said that before that, I accessed the accounts. You need to turn off all automated payments. I transferred all of the funds I had been providing to them. Kindly respond. Do you recall the credit card that Mom used as a magic wand? Totally immobile. That power bill that Dad was worried about so much before he became sick, I understand. You are no longer covered. No one left a message for me. Abandoned the tradition of saying goodbye. I hoped they could feel it. Plus there's more. Still, I bore the full weight of what I had quietly gone through for them up until they decided I didn't matter. They had the naivete to think they could succeed apart from me. I was the one who had to keep things in order. At the very moment I stepped out of the room, things began to go apart. This is Lauren Mitchell. I am in my 30s and work as a systems engineer on an as-needed basis. And an invisible connection that kept my entire family together. 2 years ago, I went back to Sacramento to live with my parents when my city ambitions fell through. I was the top student in my computer engineering class, had a successful profession at a medium-sized company in San Diego, and was living it up until I became so exhausted that I no longer recognized myself. Never getting a good night's rest because of unreasonable expectations and toxic bosses who flaunted your greatness while putting you in your place. Defeated, I sank. I suddenly stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. As I stood in the break room one morning staring at a glowing microwave, the realization that I had no clue how I had gotten myself there finally hit me. Hence, I decided to step down. When I got home, I felt like a complete and utter failure. But I was welcomed with open arms by my folks. It was implied to me, at least. The shift in me was initially noticed by my parents. While we were sitting outside one day, he said, "You're not broken. You're simply sick of acting like everything is fine." In contrast, Mother, doubt loomed around her. Absolutely. She cooked supper for me. In response, I said, "Are you okay?" When I started turning down job interviews, though, people started asking other questions. "Lauren, may I inquire as to your expected duration of stay? No way this can continue indefinitely. Are you seriously calling what you do online work these days?" It made no difference how many times I showed her my pay stubs. Even though I had regulars from Seattle to Austin, it didn't matter. She insisted that I wasn't working until I showered and checked into an office every day. Savings and a sliver of unemployment compensation provided the first capital. After that, I started taking on smaller freelance assignments, like updating networks, restoring out-of-date systems, and writing scripts for medical data apps. I was able to exceed my whole employment at the business that nearly wrecked me in terms of salary within 6 months. Not a single thing affected my mom. The only thing that counted was Dad. His declining mobility prompted me to step in, helped him arrange his timetable, arrange his prescriptions in a sensible manner. I filed his insurance paperwork and handled all of his paperwork. I covertly supplemented his retirement money as they started to disappear. What does the energy bill look like? Upon payment. Is that for food handled? Are credit cards the subject of your inquiry? We established a joint account, and I would deposit funds into it every 2 weeks. I didn't tell Mom for some reason. I only ensured that the lights were turned on and that the refrigerator was filled. I was the recipient of my father's apology. Lauren, will you truly be unable to afford this? There's no need to worry, I would suggest. There comes a moment when this is minimal. That is until you collect yourself. Who was I trying to reassure him or myself? Looking back, I can't tell. Ryan, my eldest brother, was not really present. After graduating college, he moved to San Jose, married Melissa, and got a job at a software business. He called quite rarely. Celebrations, milestone years. Concerns regarding Dad's well-being were never once voiced. Refrained from providing aid. Back then, I didn't hold any ill will against him. I thought he was busy, anew he had begun. The possibility existed that I was also restarting the construction of mine. I had patrons. I possessed stability. Seeing a therapist helped me reestablish healthy limits. There were many mornings when I would get up before the dawn, make coffee, and then work quietly in my window seat. Even Mom appeared to be able to unwind, if only for a short period. She would occasionally pause what she was doing and ask me what I was messing with. I would sometimes receive tea from her, but her doubts remained mostly unchanged. Isn't it missing having actual coworkers? Doing things on your own might be lonely, doesn't it? You're not merely vanishing into thin air, are you? It was all I was to her, a girl, playing pretend, on her laptop in her bedroom, regardless of how far I progressed. However, I continued. Apologies to my dad. As far as I'm concerned, families are forever bonded. Furthermore, deep down, I thought that if I just kept giving, if I could just prove to everyone, time and time again, that I was worthwhile, dependable, and sufficient. The way I wanted others to see me will emerge in due time. Little did I know. They had already decided who I was. Nothing about it had any bearing on reality. Thus, on the scheduled day, Ryan and Melissa unexpectedly arrived at our home, waving bags and seeming to be happy. I had no warning. No, not just now. The moment my eyes locked with my mother's, that is when, and saw something cold. Just one more thing, something whose message was communicated orally. This house is no longer yours. One sound that will stay with me forever is the dragging of Melissa's rolling suitcase on the hardwood floor. Its resounding tone echoed down the hall like a siren. Having everyone in the family back together is the most amazing thing ever. Later on, she made a little bird sound. I wanted to trust her because she was so persuasive, but her smile had this other quality that made it seem played out. It seemed as though she were acting. Ryan avoided giving me an embrace when I needed one. A kind greeting was the only thing he failed to provide. I carried the boxes into the guest room where I usually work, after giving them a quick look and giving a half nod. I spoke to Mom that night to find out what was going on. I was confused, and she seemed as if she was surprised. A short-term lodging is all Ryan and Melissa require, my darling. They have found it challenging. Where will they find a place to rest, since the guest room isn't that significant? So you're doing remote work, aren't you? A more suitable location can be located for you. In an instant, my office became their personal closet. In a box, I discovered my books. The whiteboard I was using vanished. My workspace squeezes in between the water heater and the washing machine. Crybaby was in my thoughts. However, I did not experience that. On the other hand, I bit down on my tongue. Once again, as a result, I had become an expert in that area. At exactly 7 in the morning, Melissa hammered on my door as if she were storming a fraternity party the day after. "Are you still in bed?" she said in a loud voice. "It is my work, therefore, yes I am. No one ever said breakfast would magically arrive, did they?" Frustrated, I squinted at the wall in front of me, seeing just half of the code. "I thought we were just doing our own thing for breakfast," I remarked, trying not to lose my cool. "The fact that we are linked is obvious. We should be helping each other out more." I made breakfast as a result. The usual fare of bread, eggs, sausage, coffee, and the fresh strawberries I picked the day before. Nothing extraordinary. I attempted to calm things down by setting the table. "Absolutely not." After asking, "Is this it?" Ryan muttered something beneath his breath. "No bacon, no hot cakes, is that so?" Even if it's not my typical, I don't like when Melissa has a frown. With a deep breath, I said, "You are under no obligation to consume it if it is of poor quality." Their shocked expressions confirmed my suspicion that I had struck them. "Are you too good to cook breakfast?" Ryan said with an increasing volume. "I don't understand the attitude. And you've been using this place as a home without paying a dime. The bills for Dad's medical care, the electricity, the food, Oh, please," Melissa said. "Being self-employed isn't the same as working from home on a laptop." Suddenly, it all clicked. They weren't just griping either. All of my hard work was being actively attempted to be undone by them. "What does Mom think?" She remained steadfast as she sipped her coffee, completely disregarding my defense and leaving them unaddressed. I mean, really, allowing it to happen. That evening, Ryan had me confined to the corridor. "I'll admit you've been acting out lately, but rest assured we're doing all in our power to assist Mom get this house in order again." By intense, "Do you mean it?" He silently approved with his arms folded. "It's not about feelings. It's about being closed off and constantly working. The health of others around you is suffering because of this. Because of my feelings, I also became a burden. I was as much of a fraud as my work was. On one of my visits to the rehabilitation center, I made an effort to bring it up with Dad. As he listened closely, his wide eyes betrayed his fear. "Lauren, I'm sorry. I had no clue things had gotten so heated," he admitted. "I simply cannot fathom how I was rendered deserving of this," I muttered to myself. He murmured, "Mr. President, you did nothing wrong. Maybe you should stop trying to sway the opinions of those who have already made up their minds about you." I was beginning to think that maybe he was right. Things deteriorated more after that. When I failed to finish the chores that Melissa had allocated to me, she started to put all of her obligations on me. Over the course of many days, the trash piled up next to the door. My mom started openly praising her, whispering things like, "At least Melissa tries to help around here," even though it was my job to clean the counters and replenish the fridge. They treated me like a second-class citizen, even in my own residence. In any case, I settled the expenses. I had to take care of the insurance. I called the medical institution regarding my father's prescription concerns. Nobody ever asked whose responsibility it was to handle those issues. They had anticipated that problems would solve themselves. And then came the day of the formal announcement. I came home after a walk with my headphones on as the sun fell below the tree line. As I opened the door, I could practically hear Ryan's voice. "She will stay until we send her packing," he said. Response: "Your mom is already on board. Melissa informed you, and she assured you that she will speak with your mom tomorrow." Oh, great! This was her chance. No, I didn't just walk right in. As I stood motionless in the hallway, shoes still on my hold on my phone became increasingly firm. They were going to make sure that I was evicted. Running away from the house, I persisted, putting an end to the life I had begun from scratch. That lonely night, I sat in my room staring at the ceiling in the dark. A shift occurred within of me, feeling upbeat. Fear not. Do something about it. For 2 years, I tried to blend in with a family that didn't value me. I persisted, extremely kind. They put their kindness to good use. Put the saliva back in my mouth. Additionally, something else went unnoticed by them. Someone informed me I didn't have power. They had forgotten whose name was on the check that was keeping the house afloat. The next morning, I smiled. The kitchen is now neat and tidy. Each towel was neatly folded. I also came up with a new pancake recipe. Later on the identical day, I began the process of disabling every system. For a while, nobody noticed. That part was the one that surprised me. Wearing my headphones, I sat at the library's computer and pretended to code while my fingers deftly navigated financial displays. Everything had been put up the year before by me. Everything: the pooled accounts, the automatic transfers, the subtle duct tape that keeps the house afloat financially. In my name were all the actions. I have given you my routing numbers. I utilize these codes. As a result, I started untangling the strings. After that, still another. The very first thing I deactivated was my mother's credit card, which she seemed to see as an endless blessing from on high. Items purchased online are sent once a week. Salon appointments. Organic and vegetarian fare, neither of which I have ever tried. In order to temporarily deactivate the card, I turned off autopay. The next step. The benefits, paying them directly from my bank account, had been going on under the radar for months, and no one had ever suspected a thing. So I turned off the automatic payments. Send them a first warning that you will be late. Allow them to reflect about the change. Then the joint grocery bill came. I sealed it after draining all of its cash. The cherry on top, so that no one other than Dad and I could access his emergency medical money. I moved it to a different savings account in his name. This was his actual fund, not the one they used for domestic crap. It remained completely unknown to everyone else. I had switched on every light by the time the day was over. When the weekend came to a conclusion, they started to pay attention. The first explosion started in the kitchen. Still inside the house, unfazed by the tremors, I kept my cool and my voice down. As Melissa eagerly opened the refrigerator, a shout of excitement escaped her lips. "Why did you think we wouldn't get the groceries? We're completely out of everything." At that moment, Mom's voice cut through the living room. My credit card was declined by the pharmacy. Hard cash was required of me in order to purchase my vitamins. What is going on? Sips of coffee in hand, I settled into a chair at the table. I responded in an impartial manner. I am not sure. Getting in touch with the bank can be a smart move. Ryan came up to me later that night, His face revealed his confusion and terror. "I don't understand why the internet bill is overdue. Were you the one to handle the accounts?" I revealed to him. "You said I was a burden, Ryan," as we locked eyes. "So I stopped being one." He felt his eyelids twitch. "Please tell me what you're saying." "The whole thing your way of life. Mom's shopping and the expenditures of this house have been covered by me. It was 2 years of hard labor since Dad got sick. However, it appears that my skills are no longer needed thus." I withdrew. Ensnared, he did not move. With her knees crossed, Melissa spoke up from behind him, accusing him of not being truthful. "Please review the statements," I said calmly. "Get it done. Every single deposit's name will be right there for you to see." I couldn't agree more, and the looks on their faces. Invaluable even after returning an Amazon shipment and a meal delivery. "Next," Mom said in a scarcely audible voice. "I had no idea." "You didn't tell me that you were the one doing all that." "Indeed I did. You simply refused to believe me." The following morning, I rose at the crack of dawn, as is my custom. My coffee is now brewed, stood on my possessions, at last permanently. My key is stowed on the kitchen counter. Turned off the heating system, leaving them all in the dust. It slipped my mind. Wow, I'm confused. One must not discount the efficacy of silence. I found a cozy one-bedroom apartment across town and made myself at home. Nothing special here, just some plain walls, a worn sofa, and a jumble of dishes. Still, it was mine. Peaceful, clean it well, remain composed. Subtle yet effective wording is required. Disgraceful not at all. A genuine family unit. And now, after a long time, something had lifted my chest. I focused mostly on my work. Customers learned about the shift. I shifted my attention. My mood brightened. My new normal included landing jobs on more profitable projects, like AI integrations and audits of network security. My salary more than quadrupled in only 4 months. However, their eventual arrival appeared inevitable. What they didn't realize was that they would come to rely on me more and more. They believed everything was predetermined, that power would be kept on, the refrigerator would never be empty, the obligations would vanish as if by some enchantment. I was the magician they had hired. I had off the stage at last. So having stated that, when Ryan reached out to, I dialed its number 3 times, count them all. The ultimate victor was curiosity. "Lauren, who is she?" he said, his voice hoarse, hesitant. "I know we haven't interacted much since you went, but we're having some issues. Financially, you could have contributed more than we initially thought, I guess." "I want quiet." Immediately froze. It seems like my mom has been still spending money, but it is becoming a problem. Neither Melissa nor I can pay the mortgage. And first thing in the morning, I couldn't go online. A little cynical. "Oh, no," escaped my lips. He responded with a careless, "Yeah," oblivious to the tone. "So we were wondering if you could send us some money. Basically, to get us back on track. Wouldn't you agree?" In a way, it was nearly funny. "While you pretended I didn't exist, Ryan, I spent a lot of time and energy. I covered your wife's brunch costs even though she insulted me. I made sure Mom wore her expensive shoes the entire time, and she complained I was lazy. Are you now seeking help?" Complete silence, something concerning his complete lack of awareness regarding your involvement in all that was whispered by him. "So you were hoping nobody would find out, were you? Things are becoming dangerous now." "Oh, please, at least for the time being, things are getting dicey. Listen, everyone made a mistake." Following that, I waited. Later on, it was expressed. Relaxed, plainly visible, sturdy as a rock. No, I cut him off right before he started to argue. I've had enough of solving problems for people I can't see. I gave too much up. Everyone says you wanted me to go. Now is your opportunity to live life without me. Sorry I had to end the call. The call was disconnected. As I lay back, my tea was enjoyed with great relish, and I smiled. The whole system came crashing down in a few days, not weeks. I didn't set out to follow them, but a few details lingered. My ex-next-door neighbor wanted to make sure I was okay after seeing the utility company's truck outside. I found out that my homeowner's policy was past due through an email that had been forwarded from an earlier insurance notification that still had my name on it. The second phone number was then called. It was Mom on this occasion. Throughout, she said nothing. Her anxiousness and stress were so palpable that her voice seemed like it was about to explode at any second. Your brother said that you, Lauren, had canceled all the payments. The house is falling apart, and the bills. It took me a while to reply. Silently stood there. I had no clue it was you. I had no idea, was her last statement before she finally broke her silence. We all didn't realize, and that was the essential idea. You thought I was sitting around doing nothing, I muttered. You didn't notice that I stayed up late practicing arithmetic. As if by some miracle, it was always fixed if anything went wrong. Your father, he has stopped sending us anything, she whispered. He said he's had enough of being held accountable for those who allow you to endure such pain. Oh, I totally got that. Without fail, my dad had been the one to mediate conflicts and keep quiet, but even he looked to have reached a plateau. After I left, he moved in with a friend from church, someone who can help him get the physical therapy he needs. Also, besides, someone other than my mother. He was the one who had filed the separation papers. I didn't know he had thought about it for so long. With a tone that betrayed her skepticism, Mom said, "He won't be returning. He told me to strike out on my own. Would you agree with that?" As the years go by, I choose not to respond. I didn't think it was necessary to say anything, but sometimes I wish she would simply sit quietly. At last she lost it again. Lauren, this is our final opportunity. The answer eludes me at the moment. The company fired Ryan. Melissa left the room. She just got back from visiting her sister in Arizona, so she packed up all her belongings and headed back. I simply cannot tolerate it, she expressed. A chokehold was imminent. Does Melissa really abandon him? She blamed Ryan's carelessness and said she had never volunteered to be investigated to such a degree. He turned out to be different from her expectations. In his life, he has never been. So what was the point? Mother continued, despite my best efforts, no one is hiring someone with my history. The amount of debt is increasing. Creditors are getting in touch with you. It never occurred to me that I was linked to so much of this. She stopped crying, and for that one isolated second, I felt a part of myself loosen up. This lady was still my mother. During my time in middle school, she was the one who packed my lunches, made me soup when I was ill, and would even sing to herself while she did the laundry. As she stood behind Ryan and begged me to go, I couldn't help but imagine the look on her face, as though I were an intruder, a tenant who has stayed for too long. I apologized for making you feel uneasy while maintaining my composure. Nevertheless, I am unable to assist you at the present moment. All of my endeavors have been done before. It was quite clear that I was not welcome here. She submitted without hesitation, rejected the idea of pleading. Her only reaction was a relieved sigh, this long, exhausted breath that after 30 years sounded like regret. That was the end of her call. Jessica, my best friend since high school, and one of the only people who has ever believed in me. And I had coffee with her later that week. I let her in on the secret, comprehensive report. First, the independent contractors, to the trickery in the financial ruin of individuals who had considered me disposable. She had previously suggested that you write it down. The public needs stories like yours, no kidding. I went on from there, keeping kids from experiencing negative self-esteem, instead of pursuing retribution, but to give up on it. Articles titled, "The Invisible Daughter Who Paid for Everything," are extensive and thorough, and my article is finished. I went undercover on Medium to publish it. They hid their whereabouts and refused to disclose identities. Let me tell you the truth. It exploded. Within a few days, the news had gone viral, and a flood of messages had begun to come. Behind the scenes, many were sharing their own stories of exploitation, abandonment, and homelessness. I was approached by a local podcaster who wanted to interview me for a guest spot. I declined, but I did give my okay for them to air the story. I was emailed by the TEDx Sacramento organizers right then. Their goal was to prevent me from disclosing my family's identity. They requested that I discuss boundaries in terms of one's worth to oneself, concerning the weight of regaining control after giving it up throughout one's life. I was apprehensive at first. At that moment, the memory of the night flooded back. As I sat in the dark, rescuing a house, I overheard my own family plotting my escape. Thus, I consented. On event night, the lighting in the auditorium was cozy and welcoming. Despite a slight shaking in my hands, I stepped onto the stage and spoke with conviction. And word spread. You shouldn't be surprised if the people who say they love you wind up causing you the most pain. The dangers of letting your compassion get the best of you when you fail to establish boundaries. Also, giving up isn't a sign of being weak. It's a show of respecting oneself. The audience fell into a little silence as soon as I finished speaking. Then the ovation started. No rumbling at all, but the kind that makes you feel better emotionally. To experience the relief of finally being acknowledged. Then a lovely old lady approached me, clearly moved. "You made my story known," said she. "However, the terms to describe it have eluded me." I felt a burst of vitality in my chest that I hadn't experienced in a long time, and I couldn't help but smile. End of hostilities. Eternal calmness. Optimal tranquility, like the type you ask for when you're swimming. On the other hand, the type that comes from studying a subject, that saved my life. Jessica was more than just a friend. She was a lifeline. Our friendship goes back to our junior year of high school and has weathered breakups, jobs, difficult moments, and years of quiet that are mysteriously followed by a smooth return to discussion. When I finally left the house for good, I got in touch with her right away. The idea of being alone in such silence was intolerable, and I had no idea what I needed. She finally answered after 2 rings. "Do you feel okay?" As my voice quivered, the word no escaped my lips. "I will come and retrieve you." She showed up 15 minutes later, bundled up in a sweater, clutching 2 iced coffees, and radiating an aura of calm that was like a warm blanket on a cold night. There was an excess of explanation. She refused to provide any details when asked. I sat in the passenger seat and watched her expertly navigate the vehicle while staring out the window. She gave me permission to stay the night at her flat. And now, on the 4th morning after I had successfully converted a corner of her sunroom into a makeshift office, she said, "All right, this is beginning to feel like college again, except now you actually have money." She marched in with a plate of pancakes. We were too embarrassed to control our laughter. Throughout our time together, she never once treated me like a bother. I felt like nobody ever noticed how much I was hurting. The worth of my labor, my pain, and my decisions has always been a source of strength for me. She nodded at me in a significant way when I said that I was thinking about going solo. "You should. Travel at your own speed. Find a spot that reflects who you are." When I told her I wanted to do something more substantial, maybe start my own business, make a true brand out of all the contracts I was managing, her excitement level skyrocketed. "Years have passed since you began, and it is about time that others began to pay attention to what you were doing." She helped make suggestions for names. During my talk, she reviewed the slides. She connected me with a former client who needed my expertise in network system upgrades and got me in touch with them. That one led to the creation of 3 more employment. Rapidly following the formation of my limited liability company, LLC, I registered domain names online and began billing clients under the name Northlight Systems. Jessica designed the logo at no cost to the client. She reflected on how, despite the seeming difficulties, I could always discover a way forward. Because of it, it was more than what I made in the first 3 months at my last corporate job. Financial factors weren't the only ones, though. Ownership became an issue. Freedom. Having complete confidence in my ownership of all client systems and code I developed, I would initially contact Jessica if something good happened. My first panic attack in the new apartment occurred when I was shocked by the abrupt quiet and realized I was completely alone. She helped me to relax after that. It stayed shattered. She just wanted me to know that being alone doesn't always mean you're abandoned. Sometimes it means you're finally secure. I still can't get rid of it. In retrospect, I won't only remember the anguish of loss and treachery when I consider how I weathered my worst storm. It's she I'll go with. On the couch next me is hers, 2 or 3 mugs of coffee. Absolutely no complaints, having presence. It appears that not all forms of love require a return. Some people don't require an explanation from you. They take you at face value, and they are still there. At first, it was just a diary entry, a way for me to let go of the weight I was carrying. Even at that point, I had my reservations about keeping it a secret. The words, however, flowed out like a deluge, outpacing my typing speed. Line after line of truth that has been swallowed for far too long. I made a note of the day they told me to leave. I kept my head down, paid the bills, and nursed the silence, despite them treating me like wallpaper. As they smiled and gaslighted their way out of my life, I recorded it all. I vanished into thin air, till their loss was proportionate to my vanishing. I sat there glued to the TV after it was over. A massive 12 pages exist, unfiltered, sticky as blood. The keyboard was a real pain. Under the pseudonym Daughter in Shadow, I went ahead and hit publish on Medium after rereading it and making some minor revisions. Very few people will read it. I only got 2 or 3 comments. Disappointing. But in only 48 hours, over 30,000 individuals saw the message. Several online communities, including Twitter Reddits r/true off my chest, and a few of Facebook's support groups for adults who had grown up in abusive homes, had shared it by the end of the week. Even though the comments broke me at first, they ultimately helped me get back on my feet. This story is also mine. I was convinced I was going mad until I perused this. I thought I was all by myself when I left my mother's house yesterday. Additional ones existed. Nobody here was involved. Sometime between the fourth and fifth day, I received an email from a producer at the podcast The Unheard Ones. She wanted to know whether I would be okay with someone reading my article aloud to me without pictures or audio. I could keep using my pseudonym and everything would remain secret. I almost said no. Thousands of others would identify with what I said though, so I changed my mind. One who needed permission to go. Evidence that self-defense wasn't egocentric was desperately needed by the public. I decided to videotape it as a result. My voice was shaking. My breath was coming out in fits, and my hands were clammy as I read the entire poem crouched in my bedroom with the mic that Jessica had loaned me. Nonetheless, I triumphed over it. On Tuesday, the show was to air, and by Thursday, my pseudonym account had reached capacity. Messages for therapists, college students, parents going through a divorce, nurses and technical specialists. Testimonies of individuals who invested a substantial amount of effort into rescuing relationships that were fundamentally defective. If one woman's words are to be believed, I listened to your narrative while sitting in my car in the grocery store parking lot. I stayed outside because I could not sleep. You have spoken things that I could never put into words. The moment it hit me that a bigger story has developed around my encounter. It is the property of every generous soul who kept giving until they could give no more. A sociology class at a local university had asked me to talk to their class later that month about modern family dynamics. Entering a classroom and seeing my work incorporated into the lesson plan was strange. Some of them shared personal anecdotes, while others asked insightful questions. A girl waited after school and announced, "I intend to depart soon. Despite my beating heart, I'm certain that everything will be well now." Glassy eyes revealed my agreement. I could empathize with that individual because I knew what it was like. Word spread like wildfire. It was also requested for reprinting by certain media outlets. That they keep the original title was my sole requirement. The day they fell apart from me was the day they lost all that I had given them. On rare occasions, a human being does initiate contact. It is not always essential to include a thank you note. A few folks have even asked me how I knew I needed space. What I say in return remains constant. Be patient and it will happen. Once you come to terms with the fact that you can't depend on their understanding, is achieved when one achieves self-awareness. This entire experience has taught me one thing, Boundage, is love without boundaries. Without boundaries, love isn't love. I used to believe that being quiet and reserved was the way to be a good daughter. Being approachable, doing what was right by other people, even when it was exhausting for me. For some reason, I was under the impression that if I just did, a little people would take notice, treat me with dignity, and appreciate my value. On the other hand, the truth is, people don't always value the things that others provide to them for free, especially if they think it's where they belong. Everyone treated me like family. On the other hand, they saw me as nothing more than an alternative, a subtle mechanism that kept everything running so they could pretend everything was okay. As soon as I stopped helping, their expressions changed. I had an attitude when I spoke out, they said. Upon my departure, I was said to have been heartless. However, I wasn't heartless. Hurt, disappointment, and the truths I couldn't escape were the feelings whirling about in my head. The following thing I did was draw a line. For the first time in my life, I put myself first. The first thing I should have understood sooner is that limits should be stated with clarity, not severity. I will not let you break me. That is how much I love you, the message says. I can love you from a distance, it says, very safely. The second rule is up next. Dignity does not need being indispensable. It makes no difference if other people recognize your worth as long as you know it for yourself. I used to believe that unless I contributed anything, my life had no purpose. If I couldn't hold my inner circle together, I was utterly failing. After learning, just because other individuals choose to disregard your value doesn't imply it disappears. You are under no need to show that you are human. Your utmost regard for it is required. Finally able to, no matter how distant you are from your former self, you have the power to reinvent yourself at any age and in every phase of life. It was never my intention to become an entrepreneur or a champion for the underdog. Peace was all I yearned for. Everything else was built from there. Rest is not a mental condition. There's no need to desire for improved care from random people in a room. Consistently putting yourself first despite the pain is leading to positive outcomes. I am now in my own room every morning when I awaken. My coworkers have great respect for my skills. If I'm hungry, I eat. If I need to relax, I relax as soon as I sense the urge. No one has come knocking on my door demanding breakfast yet. My work is always believed to be true. There are moments when the silence is even more ear-splitting than the chaos I fled. However, I have discovered that quietness to be my own. That is not the me they aimed to devalue, the invisible daughter. However, I am now whole, pure, and unbeatable. Consequently, if you are reading this, you will feel inadequate, unwanted, and totally exhausted when you try to maintain your composure. I implore you pay close attention. You are free to enjoy peace at any time. You don't need anyone's okay to go if remaining there is killing your spirit. On top of that, giving up does not mean you are weak. You are liberated. I stand on my tiny balcony every morning, coffee in hand, and I inhale deeply from the sea air as if it were proof that freedom tastes delicious. The sun softly rises over Santa Barbara's canals, bathing my balcony in light. Every week I travel north to visit my dad, Gerald, who has finally found a tranquil assisted living home nestled among towering redwoods. The whole nursing staff knows my name. They wave to me and joke that Gerald's expression changes completely whenever he hears my footsteps coming down the hall. Despite his ongoing joint pain and treatment-related difficulties, the cloud that had previously veiled his vision has lifted and he is filled with renewed optimism every time we visit. As we sit side by side on a worn-out bench, hummingbirds flitter around us, and he gives me that huge, kind smile I thought I'd never see again. When it's just the two of us, there's no pressure, no criticism, and we both understand that love can be real even when it hurts. We talk about everything from the company I just joined to his online lecture series and the unexpected twists and turns life takes after 70. I hold his words like a warm stone to my heart, knowing that something beautiful did manage to escape the destruction, since he always adds, "Proud of you, kid." His hand firmly grips mine as I walk. Work is no longer a prison, but a thrilling experience. Upon returning to my apartment, I switch on my laptop and see the brightness of upcoming projects. Jessica's new website is now up. Northlight Systems is thriving, and I am receiving more inquiries than I can answer. The absence of noise isn't peace, it's the presence of choice. Every day I choose to go barefoot on the beach in the evenings, listen to the waves caress my ankles, and not have my phone with me. Things like yelling, banging doors, and the precise moment they told me to leave the old house often pop into my head, but the second I give in to these images, I see them fading away like bits of driftwood carried away by the tide. They no longer have any power over me. At this very moment, my belongings are comprised of the rhythm of my breath as I run along Cabrillo Boulevard. First thing in the morning, the sound of my own heartbeat as I sign emails and the laughter of new friends. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I am the founder. There are these little noises that reassure you that you are safe and that you survived. Amidst the stillness, I whisper a solemn promise to myself and to the girl who thought she had to make everyone happy before they would love her as I shut myself in for the night, the lights out, and the window slightly ajar, welcoming the ocean breeze. She will see a difference this time, I promise her. From this point forward, we will select joy. I see my dad peacefully sleeping, thinking about things that don't concern him, as the waves outside stay quiet and undisturbed. That wraps things up for me. I'm pleased.